Every time the pressure rises, we play better. Let's go take down the trail.
An Ultiworld subscription gets you closer to the players and personalities you care about with game video, in-depth written and video analysis,
He's going to take off deep, but what he does is very simple.
documentary shorts,
And we've played Brute Squad before, and it just feels a little bit harder to lose this year.
and a whole lot more. To get your subscription or learn more, go to ultiworld.com/subscribe.
Hello everyone, and welcome into Ultiworld's coverage of the Pro Championships here in Middletown, New York. Getting ready for this mixed semifinal matchup between Boston Wildcard and Minnesota Dragon Thrust. I am Chris McGlynn alongside Pat Stegemeller, excited to bring this game to you. A lot of great play so far this weekend, capping off the final round of play for Sunday before the finals move to New York on Monday. Boston Wildcard in white, starting on defense. Minnesota Dragon Thrust in purple.
Max
Starting,
Rick
I don't
with
know.
the pull there for Wild Card. The wind has picked up here in the last round. Hasn't been much of a factor this weekend, but it's starting to gust in a way it hasn't before. Presents a new challenge for these teams to deal with on the fly.
Alicia Carr with the disc now for Dragon Thrust. Minnesota undefeated so far this weekend. Got the bye into the semifinals after winning Pool B, going 4-0. Wild Card 3-1 in pool play before taking care of business in the pre-semifinal, knocking off No Touching, also from Minnesota, and advancing to this game here. Patient offense so far from Dragon Thrust, but good defense from Wild Card to counter. Overthrow here, first turnover of the game. Looking in the area of Claire Oakley, but overthrown.
And great defense there from Judy Ledley on Wild Card. She poached the lane to take away an in-cut and then tightened in on her mark to deny the dump, leading to that high stall throw.
Rick upfield, elevating to bring it in there. Nice grab by Wild Card to save possession. Toss downfield, looking to the end zone, and Ledley in the area. Knocked away. Alicia Carr laying out as well. Contested disc in the end zone. Going to go Dragon Thrust way. And we're going to have an injury call here from Carr. She will walk off. Does not seem to be anything too serious.
Tight window there on that throw. Wildcard had momentum moving down the field, and sometimes a thrower can get caught up in that. Try to squeeze something into a place they don't need to.
Dragon Thrust back on offense here. Chance for its offensive unit to get back on track. Inside Huck here looking for Oakley downfield. Oakley reaching up and bringing it in. Patient offense so far from Dragon Thrust. Following the Huck, now looking downfield. Almost knocked away, brought in on the goal line. Into the end zone, and just squeezing it in there. Tight windows, Oakley with the goal for Dragon Thrust. Contested first point ends with a goal for Minnesota.
Wildcard had their shot, but they threw it away, and Dragon Thrust was all too happy. The second chance at a hold. Aggressive downfield looks from Dragon Thrust to start the game. Something we should be expecting from this team. Not afraid to air it out.
Claire Oakley there going up line into a contested space. Nice help defense there from Luke Webb of Wildcard, but Oakley beating him to the disc to make the play. So 1-0 after an eventful first point. Both teams turning it over before Dragon Thrust punched it in. Got a chance to see this Wild Card offense. Boston looking a lot stronger than in recent tournaments. Had a bit of an up and down tournament at the World Ultimate Club Championships. and failed to really make much of an impact at the U.S. Open, but coming in as the 7th ranked team in this tournament, making it to the semifinals, definitely outperforming expectations to this point. Pull here from Dragon Thrust. Deep pull into the end zone, fielded by Kyle Johnson. Tight window there, almost knocked away on the goal line. Travis Layton closing down the space. Just brought in there. Alex Capanos along the sidelines.
Pinos, formerly of Ironside, made the move over here to the mixed division.
Shot downfield, and Kyle Johnson running underneath it to bring it in for the goal. I believe that was Evan Switek on the huck. Brought in well by Johnson, running into it. Take another look here. Power position shot.
In motion. Easy work there for Johnson. Wildcard ties it up. Dragon Thrust did a great job of getting down on the pole, covering the pull play, making life uncomfortable for the handlers, but Wildcard was patient, and as Dragon Thrust started pushing more and more into the backspace, they left the downfield options open. Johnson took advantage, and we're all tied up at 1.
Good start here for Wildcard. Boston getting its first hold of the game, clean point for them. Definitely a bit of a different look this season, especially at this tournament. Mike McKenzie, the usual coach for Wildcard, not here. His wife is pregnant, so he's home with her. Excited for him and his family. Hopefully all is going well there. So we actually have Catherine Sullivan stepping in, coaching this weekend. Usually a player on Wildcard, but injured, so stepping in to take over the coaching role. Definitely a little bit of a new sensation for her, but handling it well so far. Wildcard 4-1 on the weekend to this point.
And some new faces here on the D-line for Wildcard as they've cycled out many of the players they had in on the first point.
Deep shot right off the bat, looking for Marty Adams deep. Adams along the sidelines, tracking it and gliding into the end zone for the goal. Minnesota makes it 2-1 on just 2 throws.
What a throw that was. Touch, location. Jody Robert was back there for Wildcard, but nothing she could do about that absolute rip from Austin Leanne.
Initially seemed like it was going to go out of play, and Adams patiently waits for that to come down to him in the end zone.
That's a perfect throw. Nothing short of that.
So after a little bit of a scrappy first hold for Dragon Thrust offense, that time a lot more efficient, just a couple of throws to punch it in, make it 2-1, restore the lead.
And again, we see them attacking aggressively downfield. Wildcard parked a cover in the back there, but nothing they could do about the throw. We'll see how they try to adapt to that deep game as the first half wears on.
For Minnesota Dragon Thrust, definitely a good test for them after having an up and down U.S. Open. Getting back on track here, coming in as the 3rd ranked team in UltiWorld's power rankings. And looking strong to this point, beating Seattle BFG in pool play. Number 2 team in UltiWorld's power rankings, and aiming for a spot in the finals tomorrow.
Dragon Thrust have been a little under the radar this season. You know, they're a few years removed from their totally dominant period, winning title after title. They're not as new and flashy as Space Heater. They didn't win Worlds like BFG. They're not the defending champions like Mixtape, but they're a legacy team with a lot of great players and cannot be overlooked.
Thrown into traffic, tipped and brought in by Wildcard. Questionable decision, but it pays off in the end. Andrew Pillsbury getting on the receiving end of that one. Initially intended for Eva Petsker here. Take another look.
And the Dragon Thrust defender there trying to come over and make a play, not picking up the body of his man. That's a tough decision. You want to attack the disc, you want to help your teammate out, but at the same time, sometimes you have to trust your teammate to make a play, and you have to be there to put a body on the second receiver in the area. Split-second decision-making, and it didn't work out that time for Dragon Thrust.
Brian Von Tuca coming over to try and get the help defense there, but unable to close it down in time. Ends up with a wild card goal. Another Huck as well. We've seen a lot of deep shots in the early going here. Both teams utilizing the deep ball to great effect. Tied at 2 now. Boston gets a chance to send its defensive unit back out there. Some more fresh faces, kind of looking a little bit more like the first defensive unit we saw on the field for wild card.
Matthew Heath here with the pull. Pretty good one last time. And we'll see if wildcard changes up their deep space cover. They had a shallow poach not too far deep last time, and it didn't work out.
Deep pull once again from Heath. Fielded by Tom Green. Adams underneath this time. Now Marty taking a shot downfield in the area of Sierra Barthan, and it's going to float out of play. Adams on the receiving end of the previous Huck, unable to convert one of his own, and now Wildcard will get a chance at a break.
It was a similar idea to what worked for Dragon last time, just not quite the same precision on that backhand. A little too much I.O. Sent it spinning out of bounds.
Heath now facilitating this wild card defensive unit, looking to punch in a break. Monica Chen now with the disc. Chen upfield, bidding defender there. Adams trying to get it back after his Aaron Huck, unable to do so. Back over to Chan. And stagnation here. Oh, we're going to have a pick call downfield. Explain why it seemed like the wild card defense had completely stopped moving.
Classic Boston vert stack here from wild card.
Looking downfield, and a line drive Huck gonna come up way too far in the area of Sarah Hansen for wild card, but too much pace on that one to be able to bring it in.
Rick there never really got his legs under him on that throw. Had to try to muscle it.
Given right back though. Picked up and turfed by Dragon Thrust, something we have not seen so far. All of the turnovers to this point for both teams have been deep shots. Rick pivoting around, this time finding Hansen in the end zone, and that's a break for wild card. Boston getting the first break of the game for either team, leading 3-2.
Lucky break there for wild card, but they're not going to complain. Inexplicable thrower error there, and Max Rick atoning for his earlier turnover with a nice step around backhand. And here we see that Huck that just didn't quite connect. It was a good decision, open receiver with steps, but not quite the execution needed. Good execution there from Rick on that step around backhand.
Finding Hansen in the end zone for the wild card goal. Boston up 3-2. After missing out on the opportunity to break on that opening point and failing to convert the first opportunity of this point. Good to see Boston's defense settling in and actually converting on one of these break opportunities.
Minnesota's moved some defensive players over here onto this O-line, it looks like.
Talking with John Gross before the game, it seemed like this is a Minnesota team that is just viewing this as another opportunity to build. They were excited about the opportunity to play against Wild Card, have not seen them this season. So a chance to get a new team playing against. We got an offsides call here. It's going to send it back, and Wild Card will repull. But first meeting of the season for these two teams, definitely different iterations of both. Pat, you mentioned before, this is a very different squad than the Dragon Thrust teams of old that won back-to-back championships and seem to be annual title contenders. It's been a few years since Dragon Thrust has really been making that national championship noise, but Gross believes this team is on the path to getting back to that spot.
And they have a lot of holdovers from that team, not all necessarily in the same role, as some have aged into new positions, and but there's still that base of experience there that you can't discount.
Mexstroth here with the disc, just being able to beat the defender to the spot. Shot downfield looking for Denacor. Piles underneath, and Denacor goes up and brings it in. Two wild card defenders drop off to try and make the play, but Denacor says no problem and reels that one in for the Dragon Thrust goal.
Denacor, a Texas import here from Minnesota, moved north a couple years ago. Feeling very at home in this shootout game where both teams are ready to pull the trigger at a moment's notice.
Jamie Glader there with the huck downfield for Denacor, leaving it up there for him to go get it. And Dragon Thrust converting another deep shot, tying it back up at 3. Lots of deep hucks despite the wind so far, the first 6 points of this game. It's where pretty much all the goals have come from, but also all the turnovers, save the Dragon Thrust turnover that ended up being just short on an in-cut.
See how the teams adjust to that. Hasn't been too much either side has done here to really alter their strategy. Both sides wanting to win, playing the game their way. And that sounds all well and good in theory, but in practice, often you do have to make these adjustments in the heat of the game.
Another pull from Minnesota as its defense takes the field once again. Denacor staying out there this time. A lot of those same players actually who crossed over for the last offensive point for Dragon Thrust still on the field. Tight window there, definitely a lot of contact on that bid. Wildcard saves possession though.
We have a great matchup downfield here with Capinos on offense being guarded by Show and Rock. Two of the most athletic players on the field really going head to head.
Capinos winning the under there. Anglo now with the disc. Upfield. Undercut by Mexstroth, unable to get a hand to it. Petzinger into the end zone, and that's going to be a goal. Kyle Johnson with his second of the afternoon, and Wildcard retakes the lead 4-3.
It's a tidy little strike cut from Johnson there. Lets him punch it in and give Wildcard the lead. And that's a nice progression from Petzinger. She's looking dump, but she's keeping an eye upfield in case something shakes loose. Johnson took advantage and scored. That's an underrated asset of good throwers, the ability to focus on multiple areas of the field all at once. So you can commit to your dump with your body so the dump knows to get open, but still have the awareness to take anything free downfield.
Wildcard's defense on the field once again. Feeling like the team is hitting its stride after dominating against Minnesota, no touching in the pre-semi round. Won that one going away 15-8 the final. Long strings of breaks, the difference in the game for Wildcard. Piecing together several in a row before no touching was ever able to get things back on track. See if the defense can possibly spark one of those defensive runs now. Heath with another booming pull downfield.
As you can probably tell from the discrepancy in pull quality going one way versus the other, the wind is making it tougher to throw from the right side of your screen to the left. It's not straight up and down, but the crosswind is making it hard to get good float and distance on anything going towards that left side of the screen.
Thrown into a crowd there by Dragon, and Margot Erheim gets her hand on the disc, knocking it to the ground, giving Wildcard a chance at another break. Max Rick, one of the captains of this Boston team, swinging around with Heath. Being forced backwards so far, not much downfield success at all for Wildcard. And a pick might have something to do with that, as play will halt here.
The handler set not connecting with the flow of the cutters downfield.
Stack seems awfully deep as well, considering where Rick was set up there with that disc.
Now that's some better motion from Wildcard.
Erheim into the end zone. Excellent play there. John Rahill undercutting the disc and bringing it in. Marty Adams had great positioning there, just a little late in recognition.
Clever throw there because Adams was in position, but his back was to the thrower. Very hard to make a play on a disc when you're oriented in that direction.
Take a look at the turnover here.
Just too much traffic there. Wildcard takes advantage. And that's really smart from Erheim, recognizing that while the defender was in the area, he was not going to be able to make an effective play on the disc.
Certainly trusting her receiver there. Rahill makes a great play. Take it underneath that one and punch in another break now for Wildcard. 2 breaks in the early going. This Boston defense looking sharp and capitalizing on opportunities.
Wildcard's D-line getting a taste for playing against Minnesota teams. Start pulling another couple breaks out of here. They're going to be feasting.
5-3 Wildcard up. Looking to spark another run. Heath will stay on once again to pull.
Nice placement on that pull from Heath.
Maxstroth now, the disc in the middle of the field. Pick call, stop and play once again. We've seen a couple of pick calls. Definitely seems like Minnesota still struggling a little bit to figure out its offensive set. We've seen a couple of throwaways, a couple of miscommunications.
The stall rises here. Maxstroth puts a little blade into the forward side, and that's so tough for a receiver to gauge because you need to be standing full on with a defender on your back and reading a disc coming at you. Really tough to catch those in-cut blades.
Matt Heath getting a piece of that one and almost knocking it into Caleb Denicor's hands. Denicor calling a foul after that play, but I think not related to the catch, simply so he could set up and get his defensive positioning. Smart, tight window there as Heath fits it in. Floaty throw. Denicor and Heath both go up. Heath keeps his feet in bounds.
Maybe another pick call here.
Seems like a conversation actually between the mark here, as we've got Travis Layton discussing things with.
So what was called?
Take a listen in here on Olsen.
Okay.
He called it at 5. And I called violation because, I don't know, it just felt like it was like a long time.
I was looking at a throw.
It was 2 pivots later.
It was not. I was looking at a throw, and the contact happened. And then
All right, so what do you want to do? Do you want to play it as a contest or send it to me or what?
I mean, I don't, what is the rule? Like, the throw is going to go off either way, so it should stay there. No. Yeah, it should stay there.
Consensus being reached here between Olsen and Layton. We'll stay with Heath.
Quite the productive conversation there.
Webb now for Boston. Contact again on the mark. Travel call, I believe, actually. Alicia Carr back in the game after seeing her leave earlier with an injury. Good to see her back on the field.
Wild card on the doorstep here of another break that would give them a pretty significant early lead. It seems as though the game has been a contest, but Wild card has just been able to come out ahead in every little facet.
Great fakes there. Now upfield to Hannah Crowley. Crowley working in the handler space. Heath now on the goal line, tosses it into the end zone, and that's going to be a goal. Another break. Jody Robert on the receiving end now for Wild Card. 6-3 Boston taking a commanding lead in this first half.
Wild card doubling up Dragon here in the early going. And Minneapolis has some issues to work out. Again, that turnover, unclear if she was throwing to the clearing cut, to the in cutter. Whereas Wild Card, you know exactly what they're looking to do is they move the disc efficiently to the break side, and then two quick little pops get it to Robert for the break.
Timeout called here by Minneapolis as they will try and right the ship, figure out what is ailing them on offense. For Wild Card there, that might have been the best offense we've seen from them so far in this game, Pat. Is that we watched that one go back and forth. They attacked both ways, utilized their fakes, and then managed to hit the brakes consistently, attacking the open and break side, not giving Dragon Thrust really anything to read on.
Good time to take a timeout here. Refocus, get back on the line for Minneapolis. Halt that momentum that Wild Card was tangibly building. And we've seen a few turnovers now from Dragon Thrust, trying to throw towards the front of that Verk stack. Wildcard's done a better job of taking away opportunities in the deep space. And it doesn't seem as though Dragon Thrust's clearing system is totally nailed down. We saw on that last turnover there was a clear cut going into the force sideline at the same time an in-cut was coming, led to some of the confusion. They need to dot those I's and cross those T's if they want to get through this Wild Card defense.
Talking about Boston Wild Card, we're looking at like I don't even know if we want to call it a golden age, but certainly a really good time to be playing mixed ultimate in Boston. 4 different teams looking like Nationals teams this year. Obviously, Boston Slow White, Boston Wild Card, who we're seeing right here. And we're seeing some newer teams, Boston Snake Country, popping up this year and seeming like they are going to compete at a Nationals caliber level.
Wild Card are putting their claim on being the best of the bunch. They beat Slow White earlier this weekend. And that's going to be a fun regionals. It always is out in Devens for Northeast Regionals. But this year in particular should be very exciting in the mixed division.
Good movement so far on this point from Minnesota. Inside break there. Lovely throw to that break side. Chan taking a shot downfield, looking for the speedy Adams, and Adams brings it in. Excuse me, that was Leanne, Martha Leanne with the shot downfield to Adams for the goal. Dragon Thrust gets back on track here with a hold.
And it was the throw to Leanne that really set that point up. High stall, but able to perfectly float a flick into space, giving Leanne good positioning to look to the back of the stack and find Adams.
Adams, we've seen him attacking deep a couple different times in this game. Certainly seems like a reliable offensive weapon to this point. Very quick, able to get separation, and as long as the thrower can give him a window, seems to be converting well. So 6-4 now. Boston's still in control, but Dragon Thrust has to feel good about seeing their offense punch it in after a series of breaks there from the Boston side.
Wildcard's offense may be a little rusty. They haven't been on the field in quite some time. Not a ton of height on this O-line for Wildcard, but some players that can get the job done in the deep space.
Not a ton of height on the Minneapolis side either.
Most likely have Show and Rock trying to take care of anything into the deep space.
And Denicourt not afraid to go up and mix it up in the air, but certainly not one of the tallest players on the field.
Denicourt tearing down the field to cover that pull.
Nextroff closing the gap there. Coming close to getting the run through D, but not able to make up the distance. Stall count rising for Wildcard. Tight window there, and Denicourt gets a hand on it, knocks it away. Looking for Ian Engler, but Engler unable to bring it in.
Not enough OI on that swing pass there. Gave Denicourt the inside track.
Another timeout called here by Minneapolis. Called a timeout just before that last offensive point. Now, hoping to capitalize on the opportunity here for a break.
Want to make sure they're all on the same page. Really use this chance here. We're starting to approach the end of the first half, potentially. Tighten things up. They did a much better job of stifling Wildcard's flow, particularly in the dump space. We saw Denicourt fly down the field to cover the pull, and he was just buzzing annoyance, all point, finally coming up with the block. And it's that sort of effort and energy that you need to put into every point on defense when you're trying to bridge a gap from a few points. That we see there, he sees the throw coming all the way, shoots the inside gap. Not necessarily the most spectacular highlight reel block you'll ever see, but it was set up by many cuts worth of defense before that.
Jamie Glader with a great job on the mark as well, making it difficult to move the disc off that sideline. So Jacob Leanne now with a hammer into the end zone, and right off the back, Schoenrock punches it in. The sideline play works really well. You get it called during the timeout, and Dragon Thrust down by just one now, 6-5.
I don't know if you always need a timeout to draw up the throw a hammer to the back of the stack play, but it sure worked.
Can't argue with you there. That seems like one that you might just do playing pickup as well. That's not necessarily anything super intuitive or in-depth thought process to that, but it pays off. Dragon Thrust getting the all-important break to close the gap.
Wildcard's offense looking a little unsure of themselves in that point. Not positive which area of the field they were really trying to attack, reacting more to Dragon Thrust's defense than being proactive, which is a recipe for disaster for an O-line.
Still the best offense we've seen from Wildcard, probably actually coming from their defense when we've seen them utilize those fakes as they get down toward the red zone and really attack both sides of the field, making it difficult to key in. See some of the DC Grit girls hanging out. Women's team out of DC competing this weekend at these pro championships here in Middletown. making some noise at the Elite Select Challenge before coming out here.
Good weekend for Grit. Not sure if it's quite enough to lock up a strength bid for the Mid-Atlantic, but they showed this weekend that they certainly belong playing on a national stage.
Wild card on offense once again. Capinos taking a shot downfield, looking for Webb. Webb reading it, unable to get up high enough to bring it in, and actually landing in the hands of Sarah Mextroff. Dragon with a chance for another break here, possibly tying the game back up.
That's a good throw in motion. Webb went up just a little too early because the defense was right in his pocket.
Looking downfield now for Mextroff. Mextroff into the end zone, reeling it in. And that's going to tie the game up at 6. Minneapolis fighting right back. We got ourselves a ball game, folks.
I don't think you can criticize the Huck turnover too much for wild card there, but they need to have better defense off the turn. Far too easy for Dragon Thrust to move the disc to the near sideline and launch to an essentially unguarded Mextroff.
Neil Hanka essentially having an unmarked throw in the end. You see the initial shot here from Capinos.
And I think that's just a little bit of a misread there. The defender causing the receiver to think a little too hard about what he needed to do. Mextroff coolly grabs bookends.
We'll get a timeout now from Wild Card as they look to get back on track following a couple of rough offensive points.
Wild Card still up a break, but the momentum clearly on the Minneapolis sideline right now.
Minneapolis still needing one more break to completely get back on serve here, but certainly looking a lot more comfortable now, giving their offense a bit of a rest and getting some of their best players on the field with this D-line. Sarah Mextroff certainly in that category, getting the, not really doing a whole lot of effort, but getting the D in the end and then catching the score on a great huck from Hankey.
And I don't think Wildcard needs to panic too much about the past few points. They just need to increase their intensity and effort a little bit. You can see them lagging. It's the last round of the second day of a tournament. The sun has really come out and is starting to beat down on these fields. Wildcard just needs to take that as a challenge, start to work. We saw how easy it was for Dragon Thrust's D-line to carve through once they got the turnover. And right now, winning that energy battle is what's bringing Minneapolis back into the game.
Tie game now as Minneapolis gets set to pull once again. Neil Hanka responsible for the assist on the last point with the pull for Dragon. Winner of this game advancing to the finals of these pro championships will take on the winner of Philadelphia Amp against Seattle Mixtape, a rematch of yesterday's pool play game that went down to the wire. Wild card, a bit of a risky throw there, just behind Johnson. Good handler movement so far from Wild Card on this point.
Angler with the disc in a money position right now.
He and Johnson attacking this handler space, moving it back and forth with a lot of effectiveness so far. A roll called there and not executed in time as Johnson slips away into the end zone. Third goal for Kyle Johnson. Wild Card retakes the lead.
Kyle Johnson from George Washington University making his way up to Boston. Having a big impact here for Boston Wild Card. Classic handler dominator from Wild Card here, and you have to wonder whether or not Dragon Thrust should have done a little bit more with those downfield defenders than allow the offense to take them out of the play by being stagnant. You can't totally abandon those cutters there in the stack, but there's a reason the offense is trying to turn it into a 3-on-3 game, because that's advantage offense. And you got to involve those defenders in some way. Maybe just put one in the lane a little bit right there and make Johnson have to think a little harder about making that upline cut.
Boston's handlers grinding out that point. 3 goals now for Kyle Johnson in this first half. Doing a lot of work for this wild card team.
And now that wild card defense is back on the field, chomping at the bit, I'm sure, after the run they went on in the middle of the first half.
Kind of seems like both teams just want to put their defenses back on the field. The defense is getting hot. Offenses are the ones who are struggling so far in this one. Lots of breaks on both sides. But yeah, we've got essentially an even game. Wild card still up a 1 break advantage here, leading 7-6, just a point away from half now. Heath with another big pull. Gonna just tail out of bounds. Austin Lean picking up. We'll center the disc here. Wanted the deep shot right off the bat. Looking downfield to Oakley. Instead finds Mexstroth underneath.
Good defense there from Rick. Just missed getting a paw on that dump.
Heath coming up a little bit gimpy on that one. Seemed like he was grabbing his hamstring. Mexstroth blading it into the end zone, looking for Oakley. Oakley with a sensational grab. Unbelievable effort from Claire Oakley in the back of the end zone to bring it in for the goal.
Nika Chan, very physical defense there. Get another look at that. Might have been a dangerous bid. I think that maybe just looked worse than it was. Chan not quite able to read the disc, out of position. Bulldozed into her mark. But great grab to maintain possession despite the oncoming defender.
Almost seemed like Oakley was the one that had to come back for that disc, throwing just a little bit short. Crafty throw there from Mexstroth to get it to Oakley in the end zone. And now we have ourselves a tie game again. Next point we'll take half here. Dragon Thrust obviously hoping to do so on its own terms. A break here would get them back on serve.
7-7 double half point here.
Something that's not talked about very often. Double half point, I like that. I think we'll have to go with that from now on.
Which I guess would just be 1 full complete point if you crunch the numbers on it. But
maybe not the best name for it then. We'll have to workshop that one. Minneapolis set to pull. Jacob Lean with the disc, getting ready to rip this down to the waiting wild card offense.
See if wild card goes back to that handler dominator.
Bit of a junk look here from Minneapolis.
It's like a 2-3-2 maybe, but wild card works its way through it.
Trying to give Boston something else to think about laying out. Leighton coming very close and knocking away. Goal line here. Wild card unable to complete that throw. Some contact, but a clean defensive play there from Erica Bacon.
Connor Fortin never really got the disc squarely in his hands. He was trying to throw it as soon as he caught it. It was wobbly, it was behind, it was a turnover, and now Dragon Thrust looking to break.
Minneapolis actually almost knocking away from 2 teammates there. In the end, brought down by Blake Trantina. Trantina into the end zone, a little flip, and that's going to be a goal. Ritzman with the assist, and Dragon Thrust breaks to take half, getting back on serve in a big way to finish this first half.
Wildcard so close to getting the halftime break advantage. Just threw it away on the doorstep. Dragon Thrust wasting no time attacking aggressively downfield and then rocking a nice little give and go here to take half.
And that will close out this first half. Trantina bringing it in for the goal to close it out. Dragon Thrust, after looking and being down by as many as 3, now has a 1-point lead at halftime. We will step aside here for just a moment, take a little bit of a halftime ourselves. Stay tuned, though. Second half coming your way in just a little bit. Dragon Thrust leading 8-7.
Every time we press the license, we play better. Let's go take down the trail.
An Ulti-World subscription gets you closer to the players and personalities you care about with game video, in-depth written and video analysis,
He's going to take off deep, but what he does is very simple.
documentary shorts,
And we've played Bird Squad before, and it just feels a little bit harder to lose this year.
and a whole lot more. To get your subscription or learn more, go to ultiworld.com/subscribe.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ultiworld's coverage of the Pro Championships. We are watching the mixed semifinal here. Boston Wildcard currently trailing at halftime against Minneapolis Dragon Thrust. A back-and-forth affair in the first half. I'm Chris McGlynn alongside Pat Stegemeller. Excited to be bringing you the second half of action as these two teams get underway. Minneapolis starting out on defense. The two teams are on serve. Pat, saw a really good first half from both sides on defense. Very few turns.
Yeah, the defensive offense from both teams was excellent. Wildcard, only 2 blown conversion attempts. Dragon Thrust, only 1 blown attempt. So once these offenses have been surrendering the disc, they have not really been able to get it back.
Layout there from Schoenrock, and looks like he managed to get enough of it, knocking away from Connor Fortin, giving Minneapolis another chance at a break here. Dragon Thrust closed that first half on a 4-1 run. Excuse me, 5-1 run. Looking much the stronger side in the final minutes there. Pick called downfield as Dennecore has the disc here.
This could be trouble here for Wildcard, as their offense looked really shaky at the end of the first half, and it seems as though the trend continues here into the second with Mextroff reeling in that scuba. Another goal for Mextroff. She's having herself a nice game thus far.
Sarah Mextroff continuing to shine for this defensive unit. You see a good look there. Schoenrock just beating Fortin to the disc on the layout. And right off the restart, Dennecore lefty scuba over the top, finding Mextroff and that break side front cone. 9-7 now. Extending that lead just a little bit further, Dragon Thrust, at the beginning of the second half.
And that was a nice play from Schoenrock, but throw a little bit behind Fortin. Fortin not even necessarily that open. Just a little bit of shakiness from Wildcard's O-line. They haven't seemed to find a good rhythm. The best they've looked is when they've run a handler-dominator set, just moving the disc back and forth, mostly between Ian Angler and Kyle Johnson, which is similar to a lot of the success they had at the World Championships, running a very Angler-focused offense. But, of course, this is a different roster. They were playing with their 2017 roster at Worlds back in July. This is a new wildcard team looking to put the pieces together heading into the series. And we've seen them do it so far this weekend, but they haven't been able to keep it going for the entirety of this game.
Pole just sailing out of bounds there. Wildcard with another chance to get back on track on offense. Wildcard, once it reaches the red zone, has been fairly effective so far. Really struggles in the middle of the field in terms of really picking up yardage. We got another look, a bit of a zone look once again from Minneapolis. Pat, is it the same zone we saw at the end of that first half?
This one looks a little bit more aggressive. There's 3 players cycling into backfield rolls, and one over the top going on to make the block there.
Paying off in the end. Neil Henke getting a hand to it. Dragon Thrust with another chance to break. Goal line opportunity once again for Minneapolis. Mexstroth. Little hammer over the top, and that's going to do it. Erica Bacon into the end zone there for the goal. And that is another assist for Mexstroth, dominating 2 goals, 2 assists, and a block for Sarah Mexstroth. Now into the second half.
Just too much hang on that hammer from Capinos. But nothing too much about that hammer from Mexstroth, dropping it into such a tight little space for the assist. And Dragon Thrust D-line continues to be clinical once they get the disc back. Wildcard is going to have to stop just giving them the disc because they can't stop them once Minneapolis has it.
Says a lot about Minneapolis's D-line, the reason they're up 10-7 right now in this one. However, it also says a bit about Wildcard's offensive defense, if that makes sense. When the O-line turns it over, their ability to get it back, not good. Only 1 forced turnover by that group so far in this game.
We've seen a lack of focus from them on the transition. Dragon Thrust has done a great job of winning those transition points, these little inflection moments right when the turn happens. Dragon Thrust has been aggressive, they've known what they're doing, and they set up their offense effectively, whereas Wildcard has been looking around, trying to figure out who am I supposed to be covering, and in that little moment, all of the advantage goes to Minneapolis.
Wildcard crossing over some of the defensive mainstays to its offensive unit here. A pick called right off the bat in the handler space. Boston looking for an answer, giving up 2 goals, 2 breaks to start the second half.
Schoenrock here taking the Max Rick matchup.
Certainly going to be one to watch throughout this point. Minneapolis on quite an incredible run. Since trailing 6-3, outscoring Wildcard by a huge margin now. It's been 7-1 in favor of Minneapolis. Another pick call as Wildcard continues to struggle to find spacing in their offense.
Total lack of communication there between Heath and Rick.
Rick looking underneath, and I believe Schoenrock got a piece of that one, coming up well short of the intended target. Another break opportunity for Minneapolis.
A lot of length there to deal with when Schoenrock's on the mark.
Trantina up line, goal line now. Regan to Trantina, and Trantina scores another goal, his second of the afternoon. And that is a 3rd straight break to start this second half. And the run continues for Minneapolis. Wildcard in shock.
We're in the midst of an 8-1 run here from Minneapolis. Poor job there sealing off the mark, letting that little backhand go. And Wildcard knows that they can string some breaks together. They did it in the first half.
The issue has been getting the defense back on the field.
Absolutely.
Got another timeout call here. Got to be thinking it's from the Wildcard side, looking to regroup, figure out a new plan of attack. And at this point, Pat, I got to think that there's a really good chance that Boston Wildcard is missing their coach right now. And Mike McKenzie not being here certainly hurts the team. And Catherine Sullivan, a veteran player on this squad, doing a great job to organize this team. But it definitely makes a difference. This is the first time that Sullivan's stepping into a coaching role. Difficult for her in such a high-pressure game to really be able to figure this all out.
And it's going to start with one hold here for Wild Card. They know their defense can get the job done when it gets on the field, and they're going to have to get them on the field with the hold. But that can be an encouraging mindset because it allows you to really say 1 point at a time, all we have to do is get this hold, and then we can start focusing on winning the rest of the game.
Wild Card trying to bring the energy level back up here, needing to find some sort of solution for its offensive woes. Now, it should be worth noting at this stage that Minneapolis has been in a couple of different games this weekend already where they've been on these series of runs. Playing against New York Exists yesterday. Went down early. We're actually down in that game 12-10 before ended up going on a 4-point run to close it out, 14-12 the final. So no stranger to making these runs. The feeling that John Gross is happy to be on the plus side of these runs now, not needing to come back, but instead extending the lead in the second half.
And Dragon Thrust will look to do just that here. A defense that has been so good for the last 40 minutes or so. Raring to go. Look at Denacor charging down the field. Oh, pulled just out of bounds. Wasted quite a sprint there.
He has been the first one down on several points so far for Minneapolis. Kyle Johnson centering here. Now, Johnson back on the field alongside Engler. Some of the more recent success we've seen from Wild Card's offense has been as those two have worked the disc back and forth. Petzinger now on the sideline, marked by Mextroth. Up to Engler.
Mextroth did a good job shuffling her feet there to deny the around throw.
Pick call downfield.
Very deep stack here from Dragon Thrust. Front of the stack, from Wild Card, excuse me.
Trying to give those handlers as much space to work as possible. Engler and Johnson once again going to work in the red zone. Denacor doing a good job there to prevent the upline for what would have been a goal. Inside break to the end zone. That's going to be a goal. Wild Card finally gets themselves off the floor here in the second half. Eva Petzinger with the goal on the crafty assist from Johnson.
He had to put some real zip on that because the window was closing quickly. He got it in there, and now Wild Card gets to put their defense back on the field, the defense that staked them that 6-3 lead in the first half. And if they can just get a break right here, don't have to get it all at once, but just a break here, maybe a break a couple points from now, they'll be within striking distance by the end of the game.
Wind picking up here once again in the second half. Weather been beautiful so far this weekend. A little warm at times, but a lot of cloud cover, making it a bit easier on the players competing on the field. And for us here, of course, covering with UltiWorld. But Boston Wild Card, an opportunity now to get back on track and possibly get themselves really back into this game. The toughest part, though, has been keeping Dragon Thrust out of the red zone. To this point, Dragon Thrust 6 for 6 on red zone conversions. Thank Keith Rayner for that stat.
Dragon Thrust deadly in the red zone, but they have shown a propensity for pulling the trigger early on some deep looks. I believe the first break of the game came off of a missed huck from Dragon Thrust. We'll see if Wild Card tries to bait them into taking some of those deeper shots before they can get their efficient red zone plays onto the field.
Lean up line, ripping it downfield. Pile up underneath the disc. Lots of players going up. Adams coming close, but Wild Card doing just enough to knock it away. And Pat, another deep turnover here from Minneapolis. Opportunity for Boston to get a break.
Heath looking to pick up. This is a big moment right here for Wild Card. Dragon gave them the disc. Now they've got to take advantage.
Chan. Finding Rahil. Layout grab, unable to complete the play though. Gustav Hafelin coming very close to making a sensational grab. Foul call.
And it did look to me that he got a hand on that disc. Now the question is, was it the contact with the ground that caused him to fail to secure it, or contact with his defender? I think that's the ground. I think he drops that because he's hitting the ground, not because of anything the defender did.
We're going to take a listen in here. Conversation between the two players.
Uncontested? All right, uncontested.
So, no contest in the end. Will end up staying with Hafelin.
And that's tough because the defender there, he doesn't know that it was the ground that caused the turnover. He know he did touch him, and if the offensive player is claiming that it was the contact that caused the drop, then there's not much for the defense to do other than rescind the contest.
Into the end zone here. Up line for Heath. And Heath gets a break. That is a crucial point for Boston, needing to get some life back into its chances in this game. 11-9, still trailing, but life for Boston wildcard.
And that's what we talked about. They needed to capitalize on that moment, and they did. You can feel the energy start to shift here.
Another look there. Certainly looks like the ground did cause that turnover, but stays with Hafelin. And Hafelin upfield into the end zone. Heath just being the defender to the space. Tom Green unable to make a play on the disc.
And it's been a game of runs so far. Wildcard, of course, will be thinking about the one they put up earlier as this D-line gets ready to come back out here looking for another break.
Cannot wait a whole lot longer to start making that run. 11-9, game to 15 here at the Pro Championship. So certainly some time left for Boston to make its move, but as both teams creep closer to 15, certainly going to become a little bit tougher for Wildcard to make the complete comeback.
And they did a good job of forcing a look into the deep space on the last point, locking down on the Minneapolis handlers and having coverage in the back, but not totally taking away the deep space.
In truth, not a bad decision from Lean either of Minneapolis. Had it in a power position, getting the upline shot, just unable to complete it, hanging up in the air, just a little bit too long in the end zone.
And a nice poach there from Austin, preventing the upfield flow, but Dragon working around it.
And Mextroff on the goal line, not quite in yet. No mark on her now, as finally Wildcard closes down, and a little bit of a push pass there into the end zone. Schoenrock completing the hold. Some tight windows, but Minneapolis gets the hold nonetheless.
Offense, defense, hammers, push passes. Mextroff is doing it all for Dragon Thrust this game. And nails in a crucial hold, preventing Wildcard from gaining any more momentum. And, maybe more importantly, forcing this shaky Wildcard offense back onto the field.
Poor call there. Mextroff looked like she landed in the end zone. Should have been a goal, but instead gets a little bit of the push pass. Schoenrock scores the goal. Still 5th point of the game regardless for Sarah Mextroff.
Big moment here for Wildcard's offense. They've not been able to string holds together all game. They're going to need to be basically perfect the rest of the way if they want any chance of allowing their defense to engineer this comeback.
At the same time, obviously have to watch out for the possibility of Dragon Thrust going on a run of its own. Seen them do that several times in this second half.
And Dragon's defense has to know that it's going to take one more break to basically put this one away. So they're going to be very hungry coming down here on this point.
3-point margin right now for Wildcard, receiving. Attacking left to right. Zone look here from Dragon Thrust. And just a bit of a misread, definitely overthrown, but Tamara Austin not taking a great angle to get to that disc. Intercepted, break opportunity right away. Lofted into the end zone, and that's gonna do it for Minneapolis. That will make it work. Trantina reeling it in for the goal.
Trantina immediately getting the block back. Excuse me, getting the break back for Dragon Thrust. That's a very nice throw. Johnson not in terrible position, but that's the one spot on the field he couldn't cover. And the disc went perfectly there. Going back to that turnover for wild card, Austin had steps, and yes, the throw was a little high, but she had space to make a better play on that. Maybe just a little lack of communication, perhaps, from the sideline, letting her know she had time. Maybe just a little lack of field awareness herself. But it's those little errors that have mounted up for wild card this game, and it's put them in this 13-9 hole.
Would have been a tough play to make regardless. Two Minneapolis defenders trailing off on the backside of that play. Austin would have found herself in a tough spot, but gonna look at it here. A lot of space there. In the end, it certainly seemed like Austin could have at least taken a bit of a better route. But yeah, it seemed like something the sideline maybe could have taken her. The angle of attack she had needed to be adjusted, not something she could have possibly known just making that run herself. So once again, Wildcard's offense up against the wall, allowing a break, needing to put its defense back on the field. Trailing 13-9. Great pull there. Just keeping it in bounds along this near sideline.
Surprise, surprise. Denacor right down on the pull yet again.
Almost a run through D there. Jamie Glader, she's played a good game so far. Stepping up in the defensive spaces. Strong mark. Coming close on a number of defensive opportunities. Looked like Engler got a little bit of a travel there. It's a fun matchup to watch between he and Denacor. Johnson. Scuber to find Engler. Thrown downfield. Denacor closing fast. But Judy Ledley getting to the disc first. High release flick into the end zone. Great vision from Engler. Finding Eva Petzinger at that break front cone.
Engler does a lot of work for this wild card offense. You saw there, Johnson sort of looked off two potential around throws so that he could throw that Scuba to Engler. Shows a lot of trust in Engler to get the job done, and he repaid it there with that nice high release flick.
Boston's defense retaking the field. Still trailing by 3. Really running out of time, Pat, to make any sort of move. 13-10. Minneapolis closing in on a trip to the finals.
It's now or never for this wild card defense. 13-10, you've seen the comeback. 14-10, that's more of a storybook.
Just to give you some updates on the other next semifinal going on right now. Amp just broke. Mixtape still up 11-10 in that one. Mixtape trying to avenge its pool play loss from yesterday. Amp looking to advance to a tournament final for the second straight tournament after winning the U.S. Open. Minneapolis, though, hoping to meet one of those two teams. Has a good chance to with the way its offense has been playing. Lean racing to get underneath that one. Pick call. Not going to affect the play. It will stay with Claire Oakley.
Oakley doing work on this point.
She has been one of the underrated stars of this game, taking a shot downfield now, looking into the end zone, Prawn underneath it, and Webb getting a hand to it. Injury called, Webb coming down awkwardly on that right hand after swatting it away. I have a feeling he will say it's worth it, though, as he did make the defensive play.
Not the best decision there from Oakley. Prawn is a massive target. You can understand wanting to put that edge on the throw so that he could pluck it out of the sky, but his defender had just as good of a read on it as he did, and that's a really tough play for Hahn to make.
Heath checks in here. Now to Maxwell Rick. Patient offense so far from Wildcard. Working it along the sidelines. A pick called. Bit of a weird play. Knocked away in the end. That ended up not affecting. That's going to go back over to Minneapolis.
Weird play there. Must have been a high stall count for the thrower to select that option. There was some space there, but didn't necessarily need to take that bailout throw, particularly with the stoppage from the pick.
Especially as well, Brian Schoenrock down there making the defensive play.
The one guy on the field you don't want to target when Dragon is on defense.
Got a call here. In the middle of the stack, it appears. Oakley has the disc on the far sideline right now. We'll take a listen in.
Whenever you're ready.
Not sure entirely what the call was. I did see, I think it was Hanka hit the ground there. Not sure if that contact was from something to do with the defender. I think we got a timeout called now. Oakley calling one for Minneapolis. Actually seems like the two teams are coming together. I wonder if we're getting a... Oh, no. I looked like we were getting a spirit timeout there for a minute. I was not really sure what was happening as the two teams spilled onto the field, but just a timeout from Minneapolis. Looking to convert.
Oakley with the disc in almost exactly the same position where she turned it over earlier this point. Calling the timeout to make sure there's a plan in place to prevent that this time.
Schoenrock doing a good job to get the disc back for Minneapolis. 3 blocks so far in this game for Schoenrock to go with 2 goals as well. Showing on both sides of the disc for this Minneapolis side.
All right, the sidelines have cleared and looks like we'll get back underway.
So no spirit timeout. I was a little off on that one.
Well, plenty of spirit in those huddled dance circles.
Oakley on the far sideline here. Vertical stack look as Oakley looks to get it to lean. Tight window, almost knocked away by Rick. Stall count rising. Finds Martha lean. Pick call downfield. Play will stop once again.
Some congestion there at the front of the stack.
No real clear reset offense there as Hanka, comes back, almost collides with lean to make the play. Oakley continuing to get the disc in this underneath space. Lofted into the end zone, knocked away. Just a little bit too far. Jody Robert peeling off to make the defensive play for Wildcard. Another break opportunity here for Boston.
Oakley's played great this game, but not the place she wants to receive the disc, apparently. 2 turns from almost exactly the same part of the field on this point. It looks as though there's a injury has been called.
Some substitutions taking place. Sarah Mexstroth checking in for Dragon. Judy Ledley coming in for wild card.
And that's trouble for wild card, because basically anytime Mexstroth's been on the field, it's meant good things for Minneapolis.
Rick will pick up once play resumes here. Wild card needing to go the full 70 yards. Tight window there as Ledley forces it up line to find Heath.
Wildcard stuck on this flick sideline, finally moving it off now. That's going to make the offense a lot easier.
All on the break side, knocked away though. Excellent defensive play. Minneapolis denying what would be a crucial goal here for Boston Wildcard. That was Tyler Tom Green with the layout effort.
And that's break side coverage, making up even more ground than you would.
Huck downfield, actually tipped there. Guiding a hand to it, Andrew Pillsbury intended there for Oakley. Just a little bit too much of a low line drive to make it through the Wildcard defense. Timeout called this time from Heath, as Boston will look to talk things over. Timeouts from each team now on this point.
And I think that this long point emotionally, mentally favors Wildcard, because they'll get such a boost from getting this break, because both teams have invested so much in it that it will create almost more momentum than it would have otherwise if they had gotten a quick break right away. Of course, the flip side is if they lose this point, they are all but done for, but that was the case anyways. So the rising emotional stakes here, I think, benefits the trailing team.
Wildcard still down by 3, an opportunity to cut it to 2 if they are able to convert this break. Been a bit of a roller coaster game for both teams. Minneapolis getting out to an early lead. Wildcard punching in some breaks of its own to go up 6-3.
And after Wildcard's D-line offense had looked so good in the first half, I've really seen them struggle on this point. Some nice plays from Dragon Thrust, to be sure, but not the same clinical execution we were expecting.
Soft cap going off here, so add 2 once this point is scored. Stall count rising. Chan getting it off, finding Rick. Rick now with the break upfield.
Rick's around backhand has been money all day.
Seems like Wildcard wants to run through him, trying a little bit too hard to force it back to Rick. Results in a short field turnover. Lean around to Tom Green. Still an 0 point here for Minneapolis. Henko with a lot of space.
Mexstroth wide open on the fore side, but no one saw her.
Schoenrock going deep. That's where Tom Green was looking, but did not put it. Instead finds Mexstroth on the open side. Got a pick called once again downfield. I think as these two teams have tired, definitely not clearing as effectively as they were earlier. We've seen a lot more picks in the second half.
The Dragons' stack looks a little close to the disc.
Floating that one over everybody is Mexstroth, looking to try and find the inside break for the reset. 3 different Minneapolis players elevating and unable to bring that in. Wind definitely becoming a factor here. We're starting to feel it up from where we're calling this as well. Have to see how both teams adjust as it continues to gust from kind of the far sideline towards this near side at the camera.
Nothing happening downfield here for Wild Card.
Mextroth knocking it away. Another block for Sarah Mextroth. The around throw there intended for Ledley, floating just a little bit too much, and Ledley trying to toe the line, unable to fully attack that disc without risking going out of bounds. Deep shot right off the bat, looking for Mextroth. Mextroth reading it, and the wind carrying it out of her reach. This long point continues.
This point starting to take on a life of its own. Both teams are getting fatigued. Just some sloppy execution errors on both fronts here.
And an injury call here. Sarah Mextroth walking off the field.
So the player who came on from an earlier injury sub this point forced to depart. You don't see that very often.
Emily Regan checking in now for Minneapolis. Definitely not a good sign for Minneapolis for sure. Mextroth done a lot in this game, and it would be crucial. You gotta hope it's nothing too serious. She seems to be okay walking off under her own power, but definitely want to see her on the field in a potential final matchup.
And once again, Heath walks to pick up the disc. His Wild Card is 70 yards away from a break. The back of Wild Card's stack is stretching more than it is actually cutting. Not presenting a lot of options, although that's a nice in cut there from Nelson. Much better flow here. Wild Card starting to feel trapped on the sideline.
Once again, trying to find Rick, forcing it to him in a tight space. Matched up with Austin Lean. Chan finding Heath. Heath upfield to Rick. Rick running onto it and finally ending this marathon point. And it is a break for Boston Wild Card, giving them some hope here, trailing still 13-11, but the alternative would have essentially doomed any chances of coming back. Game to 15 now between these two.
And that really gives Wild Card some life, because this Dragon offense has to be bushed after that point. As we see Rick burning up the sideline there, using his frame to take position, not give the defender a play on the disc.
Hard fought point from both teams. Certainly difficult for both offenses to really get a whole lot going. A lot of turnovers, some just unforced errors, but saw some great defensive efforts on that point as well.
I expect that we'll see a lot of roster rotation here. And in fact, we're seeing Wild Card move some O-line players over to the defense. So if they can get another turn, they'll have some of their horses out there ready to run. By the same token, we see some D-line players moving over to the O-line for Dragon Thrust, and I think that's advantage defense. When you have to move some players over, I'd rather be moving O-line players to my defense than moving D-line players to my O-line. Just another reason that that long marathon point played into the hands of Wild Card.
Sarah Mextroth back on the field here. Seems like that injury, no problem really. Getting back on track. Good movement right off the bat from Dragon. Stall count rising though.
A nice switching downfield from Wild Card.
Ritzman playing small ball, finding Denicourt downfield. And a nice place throw for Denicourt.
Switching didn't work out that time. Johnson switched off initially to absorb the deep cut from Adams, but then never really got all the way back onto his man. As we see here, just a nice throw, perfect edge on it. And with Johnson lagging behind, Dragon pushes their lead to 14-11.
Just a point away from closing this out now. We've seen Caleb Denicourt, first one down on most pulls on the defensive unit, using his speed this time to get separation into the end zone. putting Dragon on the doorstep of a date in the finals.
Wildcard's offense will be the only thing standing in between Dragon and that date to the finals on this point.
Pat, I know you said it was probably advantage Wildcard last time out, having to switch over some of those offensive players to the D-line. However, now that D-line getting scored on, those offensive players having to walk right back onto the field, take their positions along that line. Definitely a little bit tiring. You're asking a lot of these O-line players to go every other.
Well, luckily for Wildcard, they capitulated in about 4 throws to Dragon on that point, so
not too long of a D point. Good point.
Hopefully not too taxing on them, although I don't think that was the strategy.
Dragon thrust, opportunity to close this one out. Just finding out that Seattle Mixtape getting the win over Philadelphia Amp in the other semifinal. Mixtape will be taking on the winner of this game. Looking more and more like that winner will be Minneapolis Dragon thrust. Still a couple more points to play. Wildcard hoping to extend this game just a little bit longer. A lot of contact. 2 different Minneapolis players bumping into the handler there.
Dragon thrust coming down in a zone. Wildcard hasn't had too much trouble with zone so far this game.
Outside of the overthrow, looking for Tamara Austin, a couple of points back. Wildcard pretty effective picking its way through the zone, especially with the handler movement we've seen from Angler and from Kyle Johnson. Pick call will send the play back to Angler, I believe. Possession actually going to stay here with Tamara Austin. Austin, the 2018 winner of the Donovan Award. Playing with Wildcard here. Johnson and Angler continuing to play this 2-man game.
High release lefty there, gets the job done.
Pick call downfield once again. A lot of picks in the second half. Both teams definitely tiring. Stall count rising on Angler, looking for an option. Good job by Havis to take positioning there along the sidelines. Inside throw, bobbled and brought in by Johnson. Another lefty high release. Overthrown and unable to get there. Connor Fortin laying out.
And that's so disappointing for Wildcard because they worked so hard to get the disc off the forced sideline and couldn't take advantage of the advantage that they had created for themselves.
Deep shot right away, looking to close this out. Havis going up and knocking it away. Not much of a chance there. Jamie Glader sprinting downfield but never really had positioning.
Unclear exactly what the thrower saw because Havis was all over her mark there.
Vanuka getting a little bit aggressive, taking that shot downfield, looking to end the game. Wildcard, though, does have to work at the full 70 yards once again. Pick call after how much work Boston had to put in to get it down to the red zone for the eventual turnover. Got to think that it's going to take a lot more effort from this Wildcard offense to stave off a win for Minneapolis.
Kyle Johnson throwing 3 high release lefty backhands on this point. Mark has not adjusted to it.
Excellent read there along the sidelines, brought in by Hansen. Angler going pretty much every other on this offensive possession, wanting the disc as much as possible. Floated out in front of Johnson. Unmarked now is Johnson after a attempted switch on the goal line. Another lefty high release, and that one's good for a goal. Olsen in the break side front corner. And Angler converting on another lefty high release.
Learning a lesson from his backfield battery mate. It's Angler this time with a high release lefty backhand. And Wildcard punches in the hold after a long draining point. But they're still alive, and now their defense has a chance to keep it that way if they can grab a break on this point.
I have to wonder if warm-ups for Boston Wildcard for those two is just tossing high-release lefty backhands back and forth, because in this wind, that is not an easy throw. Impressive that every single one of them was completed.
And it's interesting that they broke it out this late into the game after not really seeing much of it earlier.
You would think 14-11 trailing in the semifinals, not the time to test out maybe a throw you haven't put all game, but working at great effect so far, closing it down to 14-12 now. Wildcard still has a chance, but needs 3 breaks in a row to be able to pull off the comeback. Tough ask.
As the wind has picked up and the teams have gotten tired, we've seen more turns, though, which means that the D-line could get a shot at some breaks and would not have to work quite as hard to generate them.
Following up on that score line from the other semifinal mixtape with the win, 15-11 over AMP. Certainly getting the better of AMP after AMP won against Mixtape yesterday in pool play, 15-13. That game was streamed on Ulti World, currently available to full and plus subscribers after the tournament.
Looked
Pick
like a
call
pick.
right away. Continuing to see pick calls pretty much every point. There have been very few that have been pick call free. Thrown behind and a turnover. Boston Wildcard with a chance to break here and make this game very interesting, trailing by 2. Opportunity to cut it to 1.
That's a turnover generated by tired execution.
Just thrown behind the intended receiver. Rick now with the disc. He and Heath will work in the backfield here for Wildcard. Stall count rising. Rick putting it up, and Marty Adams reading that well, intercepting the pass before it reached the end zone. Lean, taking another shot downfield. Floating up there and reeled in. C.R. Barthen is going to end the game. Minneapolis Dragon Thrust advances to the finals. They will take on Seattle Mixtape. 15-12, your final score.
Every time we press the license, we play better. Let's go, take down the field.
An Ulti-World subscription gets you closer to the players and personalities you care about with game video, in-depth written and video analysis,
He's going to take off deep, but what he does is very simple.
documentary shorts,
And we've played Bird Squad before, and it just feels a little bit harder to lose this year.
and a whole lot more. To get your subscription or learn more, go to ultiworld.com/subscribe.